Hello. Ooh, gosh, I realized that the light has a. Give me a second, y'all. Hey, Casey. Yeah. Wait, can you come do me a favor because I'm trapped over here? Give me a second, guys. I'm gonna fix this light issue. Sorry, new light. It's really bright. Can you do me a solid so I don't have to get up from my corner? Okay, hang on. I didn't realize that the new light. Look, can you see on live? Can you move the Aunt Ruth's mirror? Can you swivel it up or down or move it so that it's not having that blinding light right in people's eyes? Say hi to my husband.
Hello.
Yeah, it's still. Or you could put a sheet over it, maybe.
That help?
A tablecloth over it.
Yeah, help?
It's still a little bit. How's it? Is it too blinding for you guys?
I don't know if I swivel it.
You could put the quilt over it if you want to steal the quilt.
Help?
Yes, perfect. Thanks, babe.
Okay, so swivel it, but your little basket was blocking it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi.
Sorry for the rough start, everybody. How's it going? I got this new light, which people are giving me good feedback on and saying that it makes it much easier to watch my videos, and also I don't have the big rings of the $12 ring light in my glasses. But I have not done a live with this big, huge, giant light before, and I didn't realize it would reflect in my Aunt Ruth's dresser behind me. So welcome. So today is Thursday, obviously. This is Parkrose Garden Hour, and I'm here for any of your gardening, permaculture, sustainable living, beekeeping, duck and chicken keeping questions. Raising turkeys, we've done that before. Urban orcharding, any of those kind of questions, hit me with them, and I'm happy to answer any of them. I'm also just really jazzed because it's spring break. My kids are all home. Casey's actually home today because his school district had like furloughs, so he's off a little bit early. So the whole family's home, so I'm in a really good mood. Yeah, so please drop any of your questions. Oh, hello in Yorkshire. Wow, gosh, welcome. Y'all have such a lovely climate. Actually, not that dissimilar from the Pacific Northwest. I love gardening, food forestry, but due to an arbitrary limit on who can own the land, I'm stuck as a food forager guerrilla gardener. Can I actually riff on that for a second? So one of the things that I think a lot of people worry about or wrongly believe, I also just realized I don't have my microphones on. A little bit of a hot mess today. One of the things that a lot of people believe about permaculture is that you can't do it if you don't have access to land. And that's not true at all. Let me plug this mic in. Thanks for being patient with me. Okay. And is that better? Hopefully that's better. So permaculture is a design system, right? So you don't have to have access to land to do permaculture. However, denial of access to land is a significant impediment, right? When we look at the permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share, making sure that people have access to land to grow food if they want to, and that so communities can be not just resilient, but also have the ability to grow food that is culturally and climate appropriate for them. Everybody everywhere should have access to land. It doesn't mean that everybody in permaculture should be gardening. There are lots of people who don't have any interest or don't have the physical capabilities, and we still need farmers. Permaculture is not everybody has to grow their own food. But access to land is a significant issue in permaculture. I have a 1/4 acre, so that is a large plot for Portland. It's pretty large. That's why the reason that we bought a house in East Portland is so that we could get a little bit bigger plots. Some of my neighbors have 1/2 acre. Some of my neighbors have a whole acre. I live in a part of town that used to be entirely agricultural until the 80s. You can still have horses in my neighborhood. One of my neighbors has had a horse. You can still have, there are people in my neighborhood with pigs and goats. You can have goats anywhere in Portland, but because this used to be a more agricultural part of town, there are some bigger plots. Yeah. But I completely agree with you. Access to land is a significant issue. Are urban orchards legal in most places? That's a good question, and I don't know. I have some concerns about urban orchards in general. I have some old videos on my YouTube about people who share this meme that's like, if we just allowed food to be grown anywhere and everywhere, then we wouldn't have homeless people going hungry. If we just planted fruit trees on the side of the streets, then people wouldn't go hungry. And that's just it's so not true. The reason that we don't just have random urban orchards is because it requires a lot of care to maintain an orchard. Orchards need pruning, they need maintenance, they need pest and disease protection, and then harvesting and processing food takes a huge amount of time. So that's why permaculture is not just like wishy-washy, like a bunch of good intentions and woo, we're looking for effective design. So if you just plant a bunch of trees in an urban setting, yes, there's concerns about pollution, what have you, but mostly concerns about rodents, other pests, concerns about who is maintaining the trees and who's harvesting from them. So I wish we had more community orchards. I don't think planting fruit trees in the city is a problem solver. Also because fruit trees tend to produce a large amount of food that is ephemeral and they produce it for a very short period of time. And you have to have the capability to harvest and process and preserve all of that food. And who's going to do that? Like that's not a real source of solving homeless or hunger for the homeless community or anybody, right? I think it's a component. We should have urban orchards that are managed by the community and we all share in the care and the harvest. Getting into my like communistic leanings, but like we should be able to have the economy of scale that way, right? It's very inefficient for me to have individual fruit trees in my backyard. When what I really should do is like I grow a couple of kinds of bush cherries, but I don't grow like tree cherries, right? In a real coordinated system, we could use our backyards and we each grow different elements and then we come together and harvest and share. Or we have a centralized location for people who live in apartments where we can all, a community orchard, basically just like community garden spaces. I don't know what communities have those on the books. Like I don't know who's funding those and maintaining those as a kind of a commons as a third space. Oh my gosh, I'm going to ramble too much, so feel free and cut me off. Oh, hi Trish, thank you. I have a moderator. Yay, thanks Trish. If you start a yard with a heavy weeds and need to create a bed, not a raised bed, where do you start? Ooh, do I have to dig the weeds out? Thank you so much for this question. Okay, this is what my yard was like, right? 100% weeds in my garden, except for when we moved in, there was an invasive stand of bamboo in my backyard. And then there was a split ornamental plum tree that I was able to have removed immediately without a permit. In Portland, you need a permit to remove a tree whose trunk is bigger than 12 inches in diameter, unless it is diseased or injured in some way. So had that removed. The rest was just like 100% weeds, mostly quack grass, which has these horrible rhizomes that just go everywhere. And so what I did is I didn't remove any of the weeds. I just sheet mulched everything with either 10 layers of newspaper or 2 layers of cardboard. And then you really want to make sure that your compostable, decomposable weed barrier overlaps at least 2 inches. If you have any gaps, those rhizomatous weeds that just like come through everywhere. So big overlap, at least 2 inches. And then I put down manure and straw and compost. And I went to Craigslist and my local permaculture group. And I was like, who has goat manure? Who has rabbit manure? Can I come pick all that shit up from you, like literal shit up from you and spread it in my garden? So that's what I did. I did not remove any of the weeds. There are some weeds that are extremely resilient that like Japanese knotweed that may require different methods. But I found smothering the weeds with a thick layer of cardboard or newspapers has been really effective. And I want a weed barrier that will break down. Otherwise, you end up, if you use plastic weed barrier, landscape fabric, you end up with microplastics because that does deteriorate over time. And then you end up with like little tiny shreddy bits of microplastic all in your ground, and you don't want that. So that's what's worked for me. I do occasionally get quack grass coming up in my garden because those rhizomes can live for years and years and years. And also, I think some of it gets blown in, right? Or brought in when I purchase a plant. So I do sometimes still have to dig those out. Yeah, especially like in my rain garden, I tend to get a lot of quack grass coming back up. I don't know if it likes all the moisture there. So I do have to dig it back up. But in the veggie beds and stuff, never had a problem with quack grass after I initially sheet mulched. Okay, thanks for letting me read. In our area, someone labeled a location name of town community garden, but it turns out those are rental garden beds in the space. In Portland, community garden plots have to be rented. You pay for a share of the water, and I think they also bring in topsoil, compost as well. But they are rented, and there can often be a long wait list to get a community garden spot. Thanks for letting me keep reading. Oh, that's awesome that you got a community garden plot. That's awesome. When we lived in an apartment, I really wished we had access to a community garden spot. If I didn't have my own garden here, I would definitely do that. When we lived in rural Oregon and we lived in a tiny little duplex, there weren't community garden spots, but we had a friend who had 20 acres and she gave us 3/4 of an acre for a garden. And then we shared the food with her. And that worked really well. Okay. Oh, hello. Hello in Portland, Oregon. Pruning blueberries. Okay. So it's you know what, we're having a really warm spring, so it probably is a little late to prune your blueberries. I do it when they're dormant. I take out some of the oldest wood. That's going to be less productive, and any crossing rubbing branches I remove. I don't prune my blueberries as much as I should, but definitely if they're waking up, I would wait. It's okay to be a year late pruning your blueberries rather than prune them right now. Okay. I'm working on design. Most years I wing it, but I want to be more intentional. Any ride or die tips from experience? That's a really good question. I also kind of wing it a little bit. So I think for me, growing what we enjoy eating is definitely kind of the core of my gardening experience and what I found is successful for me. Early on, I tried to grow things that were weird or unusual, things I couldn't buy in the store, novelty crops that we wanted to try. And then I realized very quickly the things that I didn't want to grow anymore. And so subsequent years, success has looked like continuing to refine what do we enjoy eating and what does well here and continuing to plant that. So for example, I put jujubes in my garden several years ago. I like jujubes. They are a struggle to grow in Oregon because the time that they're ripening is right when the rain comes back. So sometimes they can split right when they're ripening, and my kids hate them. They would very much prefer to eat apples. So I just grow apples instead. I ripped them out. I ripped out my jujubes, and like I'm not going to grow something and spend all of that time harvesting it to have my kids not want to eat it, right? So that's I don't know if that helps. I tend to be really I tend to garden a little bit based on my whims, and some years I grow a lot more of some crops than others. Some years I burn out. Like we're all sick of mulberries in the freezer. I have so many mulberries in the freezer. So next year, at the end of this year, I'm going to prune my mulberry trees really, really hard, and I'll probably get a reduced crop next year, and I'll spend more attention on something else. It ebbs and flows, and year to year, we have more of one crop than another, and that keeps it interesting for me, I think. Cardboard weed blocker is awesome. I usually coat it with alfalfa hay. Okay, so a note on cardboard as a weed blocker. I have some videos on my YouTube. You could just search cardboard. There was controversy a number of years ago, but whether or not you should use cardboard in your garden because of PFAS in it, which, you know, under Donald Trump, like PFAS everywhere. It's in our water again. Joe Biden stopped it from being in our water. Donald Trump is like, just freely pollute everywhere. PFAS is not a concern if you are using uncoated cardboard, plain cardboard boxes, plain like brown paper grocery bags. That's fine. It's not an issue. It's not an issue. And you can go watch those older videos. The research is very, very flawed. It relied on mixed shredded poultry bedding from one study in China. And that included like freezer boxes, which are coated in PFAS, all kinds of coated signage and boxes, which you wouldn't use in your garden. And the fact that they were taken up in the bodies of the chickens, because the chickens would eat, if you've ever had chickens, they will pack paper, especially if there's any color printing on the paper. That doesn't mean that is then going to put PFAS in your soil, which is then going to be taken up by your plants and ingested by you. So I've not found any good research and any research to corroborate this like misnomer that was put out a couple years ago that using plain cardboard boxes in your garden is going to somehow put PFAS in your body. Donald Trump and big corporations are putting PFAS in our drinking water, which is getting into our bodies. So yeah, I would not worry about plain cardboard at all. Okay, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, thank you for helping me keep up with questions. What seeds do you start? What do you start every year to transplant? Do you cold stratify or winter sow anything? Great question. I used to do a lot of winter sowing back in the day. I tend to start things from seed that are either really expensive at the local garden store or that I can't get. So, like Cape gooseberries and tomatillos, tend to start from seed. I used to do tomatoes from seed, and I no longer do. Trisha's right. There's a gal in my neighborhood who does a huge plant sale, and it's really very affordable. And I get tomato starts from her, a couple of bucks each. And so that has worked well for me. I have limited space to start tomatoes. I definitely start all my squash and beans, anything that is like just cheap and easy to start. I do it myself. I also do a lot of cuttings of perennials. Back in the day, I used to do more plant sales, so I would do a lot of propagation and then sell plants. Um, Not so much anymore. But for example, I started out with 4 honeyberry bushes and then I ended up with, oh God, so many. And a lot of that was me rooting those and propagating those myself in the winter. I don't do any winter sowing now. Um, I actually also stopped doing a lot of seed starting for all of my squash indoors. I do some backups in pots in case when I direct sow in the garden, sometimes crows dig them up or slugs will get the babies as soon as they germinate. So I do some like backup winter squash, but that's not until April. I don't start those until April. And so I direct sow winter and summer squash, and then I have some backups just in case something happens to those. Yeah. Okay, I'm just catching up on questions. Thanks. By the way, thank you when folks answer each other's questions in the comments. I really appreciate that. And thank you to the folks on TikTok because the chat on YouTube is really active. So I'm trying to answer questions as best I can. Oh, the roof runoff question. Yes, thanks, Trish. Okay, so ideally, if I had a bajillion dollars, I would have a metal roof. We have rain barrels. I'm pointing out my bedroom window. My rain barrels are on this side. We got them for a couple $100. A system that was like some prepper had this whole huge setup in Lake Oswego or maybe it was Westland, and some guy came in and bought the house and was like, I don't want all this prepper shit here. So a couple $1,000 water catchment system I got for $200. And we use it for the chickens, and I do use it in the garden in the summer. But I don't have a metal roof. I do have an asphalt roof. So it's non-potable water. In an ideal world, if I were doing water capture, I would have a roof that was metal. But when I re-roof my roof, if it's in the budget, but I know it's substantially more expensive to do a metal roof. So for me, I don't use it as potable water at all. I do have a little, in my downspout, I do have the little filter that catches all of the like bird poop and pieces of organic matter and things like that, so that I don't end up with my rain barrels just being like bacteria soup brew. And they also, then I don't end up with clogged spigots, but it's definitely not for drinking. It's not, not for drinking. I live in an apartment and I can't grow anything. That's how we were for many years. I think that's okay. That's okay. I understand the desire to want to grow your own food. I also understand the seasons of life where it's not possible. And that's why permaculture is not homesteading. It's not about self-sufficiency. We want sustainable local food systems. That makes the whole local economy more resilient, but also enables people who can't grow their own food to have access to nourishing, organically grown food. That's, again, it should be climate appropriate and culturally appropriate. I live in a Portland apartment and want to turn my porch into a big garden. What's the fastest way to get started? Would you start the seeds or could I buy the plant at the store? Okay, great question. What kind of garden and what do you like to eat? So it depends. I would encourage you to think in permaculture, we say slow, small solutions. So when I think big and fast, I worry that you might be setting yourself up for more than you intend. And it might be, you might be getting yourself into a difficult position. So I really encourage people the first year to think about growing 2 or 3 different things that they really like to eat. So tomatoes is an easy one if you have enough sun, and then you definitely can start with start. So you don't really have to get them in the ground until after Mother's Day, or in your pots. Think about growing what you enjoy eating. And then also think about what your ability is in terms of watering. If you have a balcony or a patio and you're doing apartment gardening, you are going to spend a lot more time watering unless you set up a watering system that's on a timer. When we gardened in University City in St. Louis, we had a balcony and I grew a lot of things in pots. I grew tomatoes out back because I didn't have quite enough sun and enough space for my tomatoes. I grew them out back on our parking lot pad. I wasn't allowed to. My landlord luckily turned a blind eye to it. A lot of time was spent watering, especially in the summer. Pots dry out really, really quickly. So for me, when I'm talking to folks about growing in an apartment situation, your time management is different, right? You're not going to spend hours spreading compost and wood chips, but you are going to spend more time watering. And the stakes are really high. If you're not able to consistently water, your plants are not going to yield. So thinking about how many hours a day you want, hours a week, I should say, you want to spend gardening. And then also think about what you really enjoy eating. And I would start small. And the bigger the pot, the better. The more water it can hold and the more expansive the root system can be. I've grown tomatoes and things for my sister, and right, those half a whiskey barrel, half a wine barrel works well, or any big round container. Yeah. Hello from St. Louis. Yeah, we lived on Delmar Boulevard in University City, which was lovely. I walked everywhere. I definitely miss St. Louis. I don't miss the summers, and I don't miss how icy it was in the winter. Mosquito-y in the summer and very humid and icy in the winter. Let's see. How safe is it to use the plastic netting fruit bags over plants? Do you mean the ones that are like white and you have like a little red or orange tie and you can buy them online? That's what I use in my garden. I feel like they're pretty good. I don't really have any evidence of them like shedding. Everything sheds microplastic, but I don't really have any evidence of them being an issue. I've used mine for years and years and years. They seem to be pretty UV resistant. I don't use paper bags. A lot of people use paper bags and they twist them at the top. It's too rainy here when a lot of those fruits are ripening, and I feel like the paper bags don't last very well. But if you live somewhere a little bit drier, especially in the fall, paper bags work well. Our friend group is helping us become a food forest here in the Cali High Desert. Oh, awesome. I would love to see, I realize people don't have bandwidth right now, but I would love to see more community-based projects like that where we can share the labor, share the investment. And then, it's sort of like resistance work. I put out this video a while ago where I was talking about how Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota says it's not a sprint, it's not a marathon, it's a relay race. I think a lot of agriculture is that way too, right? You're having a baby, you're having surgery, you're sick, you're at a period in your life, like my garden went quite neglected the last 6 to 8 months when my dad was really declining with dementia and I had to take care of him like nonstop. It was nonstop care for my dad. I wasn't able to tend to a lot of things in my garden. So how can we help support each other, like creating those resilient systems? If we're thinking about permaculture being permanent agriculture, our seasons of life shift and change and our capabilities shift and change. If the garden is permanent, how can we make that sustainable within the community? Yeah, community-based would be really awesome. I completely agree. We have some examples of things that work well like that. There's tool libraries here in Portland. Portland has the Portland Fruit Tree Project, which is where people grow fruit in their own gardens, but they don't have the capability to harvest or utilize all of it. Volunteers will come and pick and process all of that fruit. They make jams and jellies and things and sell them, but they also redistribute food then to food insecure people who need that extra food. I just saw a question about what's the best way to transplant Egyptian walking onions. Okay. Ruth's in the other room. I wish she would come in here. I grow a ton of Egyptian walking onions. I love them. They're a great onion for a cool climate, a great perennial onion. Um, you basically like can't help but transplant them. The bulbules on the top that flop over, that's why they're called walking onions, right? Because the bulbules flop over and then you get them moving around your garden. Any of those, pick them apart. Don't plant them very deeply. I just barely bury those little tiny roots. Or you can dig up the onions themselves if the whole cluster of bulbules self roots and you end up with a clump of onions, you can just divide them and transplant them. I don't plant them very, very deep. Ruth doesn't love Egyptian walking onions. They're a little slimy, right? They're basically a scallion. They have a really good spring onion flavor. They don't make a big bulb. I still grow and eat tons of them. If you live in a cool climate, it's difficult to grow big bulbing onions. I much prefer leeks, Egyptian walking onions, Welsh onions. I grow lots of chives, tons of chives. Thank you for reminding me that I actually have Egyptian walking onions. It's been so warm here that I need to divide and move around. Do you have any experience growing lovage? I do. Yeah, somebody asked me about this in the last slide. Lovage is perennial celery. It's in the celery family. It's a perennial. It's a great insectary plant. And in permaculture, we often design what are called fruit tree guilds, which is where you have a planting bed with a central fruit or nut tree and you plant support plants around it. Lovage is often listed as an insectary support plant. And that's because it has these big umbelliferous flowers that bring in beneficial parasitoid wasps. All kinds of good insects love to feed from those flowers. So a lot of people grow lovage, even if they don't like the flavor. It tastes like celery times 100. It's very, very, very strong. I love the way that it smells. It's just like my black currants in my garden. I love when I walk through and I brush against the lovage plant. You can just get that wonderful, intense celery smell. I find that it does self-sow a little bit. I have also found that under a mature fruit tree, it gets very leggy. And so if it's in full sun, my lovage will be like this tall. If it's under a fruit tree, it will go through the branches and be super tall and flower really high. I would say your average person needs one lovage plant. They'll provide all the celery, that flavor that you need for all of your cooking for the whole year. But I have them in several places in the garden because I think they're beautiful. I love that they bring in their food for insects, and I just really enjoy them in the garden. But it's an intensely flavored herb, very, very intense. Mm, okay. Uh, okay. People dropping puns in the chat. I have a question. I know we are now zone 9 here in Portland. I'm in 8B. I think I might be in a little bit of a microclimate. Are we safe to plant dwarf, pear, or peach trees? Some varieties say zone 9. Oh, I have a peach tree. You can totally grow peaches and pears here. My seckel pear is on super dwarfing rootstock. It's only about 5 feet tall. Totally can grow them here. If you plant a pear, pick a fire blight resistant variety. Fire blight is endemic and it'll be a nasty pain in your butt. Seckel pears are somewhat resistant to fire blight. If you check with the Home Orchard, what do they call it? Home Orchard Education Center, they have a new name. Home Orchard Education Center. They used to be Home Orchard Society. There's a list of pear varieties that might work well. Also, I'm going to forget the name of their website too. Orange Pippin, is that right? Has a list of pear and apple varieties, and you can look up their pollination partners and their disease profile for heirloom varieties. But yeah, absolutely. If you grow peaches, also pick a peach leaf curl resistant variety. I grow Oregon curl free. It is not curl free. It is curl resistant, not curl immune. And so I do get a percentage of my branches that do have peach leaf curl. I prune those off and I destroy them, but I still get large crops of really, really tasty, really good peaches. They're not huge. The peaches are like maybe this small. I have pictures of them and I have whole videos about them. They're not huge peaches, but really good flavor and much more resistant to peach leaf curl. Yeah. I don't like to spray anything. And there's only, okay, maybe this is my like anti-Maha stance. There's only so much you can do feeding yourself healthy food to prevent getting diseases, right? yeah, you can boost your immune system and make sure that you have good nutrition and you don't have any nutritional deficiencies. You're still going to get certain illnesses. You're going to get sick. And it's the same way in the garden. I can mitigate the conditions that make my plants more vulnerable to pests and diseases and help my plants produce their own chemical agents, especially against pests. I'm not going to be able to grow plants that have no pest or disease pressure. I accept that a certain amount of my plants will have pests and diseases. And I would rather have some percentage have an issue and not spray and not take the time to treat um, than to go through that process. Likewise, why not just plant plants that are more pest and disease resistant and have fewer issues? That's the reason I took out my apricot tree and I put in figs instead, because apricots are so disease prone, even though I like them better than figs. Someone said they were going to come on live today and wanted to talk about figs. So if you're here, ask me about figs. I have lots of opinions about growing figs. What are your top defenses you use for the plants? Can you be more specific about defenses? I just chopped down my green fig. It was too big. Okay, figs. Can I just talk about figs? I don't know if the person's here or not, hopefully. Oh, okay, really quickly, backing up. Sprays. I don't really use any sprays. I really like mechanical barriers for pests and diseases when possible. So one example would be the fact that we have pretty significant problems, probably for the last 10 years, with gooseberry maggots in Portland. When I first moved here, we didn't have any of those issues. I grew tons of gooseberries and like a gajillion varieties of currants. Now you either have to spray or you have to do hygiene activities in your garden and then barriers in your garden in order to get your currants without any maggots in them. And so that means cleaning up the fallen fruit at the end of the season, cleaning up the ground around your gooseberries and your currants. And then right at the time those flies are out is netting your young currants so that they can't get access. That, to me, I prefer mechanical barriers rather than sprays. I do sometimes use copper fungicide. Sometimes when I'm growing garlic, if it's been a very wet spring, I'll use it. Sometimes I've used it on my peach trees. It's organic, but it is toxic, and it's encouraged that you not spray it anytime when bees are flying or when flowers are in bloom. Yeah. Okay, someone said figs. Oh my goodness, I love figs. They're so yummy. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm getting good questions. Okay, Trish, remind me that I want to talk about slugs and then the flow hive after this. I love beekeeping questions. Okay. Figs. I grow 2 varieties of fig. I grow Desert King and Negron. If I had room, I would grow 4 or 5 more kinds of figs. 2 figs is more figs than a family of 6 can eat. I'm always giving away figs. Part of the reason that I grew 2 varieties of figs is because my dad really, really loved figs. And so I grew them mostly for him. If I had to pick one variety of fig to grow in my garden, I would pick Negron. It's also called Violetta de Bordeaux or something. I don't speak French. It produces 2 crops of small, dark purple figs. It makes beautiful jam. Desert King only produces 1 crop of figs every year. And so I live in a mild enough climate that if I could only pick one variety, I would pick one that has a main crop and a breve crop that will ripen. I also like the fact that Negron figs are less prone to splitting than some of the really big fig varieties. I don't like brown turkey. A lot of people in Portland grow brown turkey. I don't think it's very tasty. So many varieties of figs. There's a fig group on Facebook, Fig Addicts, I think it's called. That's like hardcore fig information. I also encourage people to taste test figs because they're super, super sweet and they lack acid. So you may think that you like them, but a lot of people find them cloyingly sweet, a little bit like persimmons in that way. No acid, all sugar. So I think they're delicious, but if you like a fruit that has tartness and acidity to it, you may actually not really like figs. Yeah, Violetta de Bordeaux or whatever. Yeah, I can't. Sorry, don't do French. Okay, just I really like figs. Do Negron figs need pruning between? Yes, they do need pruning. All of your figs for me. Okay, very little pest and disease pressure. The issues are birds. And then when the fruit is ripening in late summer, yellow jackets, especially those Desert King figs that split. Yellow jackets are going to be attracted to them, just like they're attracted to like your grapes and whatever. The biggest issue for me with figs is pruning. It is quite a job. And then the second issue related to that is that I am extremely allergic to Ficin and fig latex. A lot of people are. So I have to wear all long sleeves. I look like a boiled lobster anywhere that fig sap gets on me. It's some nasty stuff. And if you're pruning and you get fig sap on you and then you're out in the sun, you get that photophytodermatitis. It's really painful. So pruning, making sure I'm pruning when my figs are dormant so they're not going to get sap all over me. And even so, I wear long sleeves. Everything. I cover everything. Yeah. So just being aware. That's why I think in some cultures they believe that it's not safe to burn fig wood. That's not true. Once it dries out, a lot of places use fig for firewood. I think in Spain it's pretty common to use fig for firewood. But when it's green, that Ficin is, well, it's yeah. Okay. But pruning figs is a big job. It's a big job, and you need to know how to prune for the right structure, and then how to prune differently for a fig where you're just looking at main crop or breba crop versus one where you were looking for 2 harvests a year. It's probably more complicated than I can get into, but there are really good tutorials on YouTube if you just Google like how to prune a fig for a home garden. Okay. Yeah, yellow jackets and wasps love grapes. They really do. You gotta be careful. Okay, beekeeping. Thank you for the question about beekeeping. Okay, so I'm a top bar beekeeper. Ruth and I are both beekeepers. I got into beekeeping because I was really scared of bees, and my garden was full of bees. So when I get stung, if I get stung on the finger, right, my whole handle and arm will swell up. So that's what's called a moderate localized reaction. I'm not allergic, but I don't like to get stung because it's bad news for me. Being somebody who worked in the garden all of the time and grows lots of things that both honeybees and native bees love, I decided the best way to overcome my fear of bees is to become a beekeeper. And my friend Matt at the time owned this fantastic shop in Portland called Bee Thinking. And he made these beautiful hives, and they taught beekeeping classes. So I went and took his class, and I was like, that's it. I'm getting hives. I'm getting over my fear of bees. And I love beekeeping. So it worked. It was like exposure therapy on steroids. It was crazy. And then Ruth beekeeps with me. So we do top bar beekeeping because I feel like it is more in keeping with the ways that bees want to build their hives. And also, I did have a Langstroth for a little bit. I don't enjoy it. A Langstroth hive, for those who don't beekeep, the stacks of white boxes that you see on the side of the road, right? The traditional, like if you're driving down the road and you see a semi truck with stacks of bee boxes on it, that's a Langstroth hive. Those boxes, they're called supers, the ones on top that are full of honey. If they're full of honey, they can weigh 60 pounds. Well, I was beekeeping with my kids. When you do top bar beekeeping, you just lift 1 bar at a time, and maximum weighted down with honey, it weighs 6 or 7 pounds. So much easier and safer for children to do top bar beekeeping. So I have a Kenyan top bar hive and I have a cathedral top bar hive. And the cathedral top bar hive was given to me by a friend who someone gave it to her. And I think it's like homemade. So I can't tell you where to get a cathedral hive. It's a much more unusual kind of top bar hive. I have a couple videos about it. I find that it's much more stable. The comb is much more stable, especially if you're getting into a hive on a hot day. So I'm not a huge fan of Langstroth hives. I don't have a Warre hive. I really like my top bar hives. Both of my colonies died over the winter, which is quite common in Portland. The overwinter survival rate is about 45%. That's pretty typical nationwide. So I will have to catch swarms. I have a bunch of old beekeeping videos, including one where, guys, don't do what I do. I typically wear overalls, and then I wear a beekeeping suit and gloves and a hood, a veil. But I don't wear pants. I just wear my overalls. Well, one time I went out and I had black leggings on because I'm like, this is easy. We're catching a swarm. Swarms are really docile. This is going to be no problem. And no, I got stung 11 times in the legs. Bees really are attracted to black. That makes them upset. I think there's some thought that that's about black bears going for their colonies. So if you wear black clothing, bees don't like it. That's the only time I've ever been stung collecting a swarm, and it was my own fault. Thin leggings, and I dropped some of the bees and I pissed them off. So totally my fault. I understand a lot of contentious, conflicting viewpoints about whether or not we should keep honeybees. I don't purchase bees ever. I don't participate in bee breeding. I only catch swarms. Those are bees that would be in a tree in somebody's yard. They would be in the wall of somebody's house, and an exterminator would get called in. These are bees that are already naturalized in the wild, and I'm giving them a home in my garden. They're already here, but I don't support bee breeding. I think that has introduced a lot of genetic weaknesses, right? Breeding for docility of bees has made them more susceptible to varroa mites, etc. So I understand people get really mad. Bees are an introduced species. They're naturalized. They're already here, and there are swarms everywhere. So I just catch the swarms that are in the neighborhood. Okay, flow hive. So, friends with people who own the flow hive. I'm friends with some of the big people who funded it, and so I'm trying not to say too many bad things about the flow hive because I understand it's the business model for people. Okay, let's just take the filter off. It's bougie, it's expensive, it's gimmicky, and I don't like it. I don't like the flow hive at all. To me, it treats bees like as a beekeeper, I want to have a relationship with my bees. And the flow hive, for those of you that don't know, it's got a plastic face on it. Bees hate plastic. Bees hate plastic. My top bar hive has a little plastic viewing window, and the bees immediately covered it with comb. They don't like plastic, and they don't want any sunlight, right? They're cavity dwellers. They don't want that. So with the flow hive, you basically can just turn a spigot and crush the comb, and then it goes into your jar of honey. And to me, that removes a layer of relationship between the beekeeper and the colony of bees. And I don't like it. It makes it feel like an industrial product. I feel like the flow hive is like feedlots for bees. That's my own personal take on it. I don't like it. It makes it harder to tell if anything is going on. It makes it harder to anticipate the needs of your bees. I like to get into my colony, not very often. I don't treat my bees, and I'm not a very intensive beekeeper because I kind of want to let them do their thing. But I do want to see how they're doing and how they're building out comb. And right, I like to look and see what are the different colors of pollen and figure out where are they feeding from, and what kinds of food are they enjoying, things like that. So, and also if there's any significant issues, right? If I get into my colony and there's a whole bunch of queen cells, okay, are we anticipating a swarm? Do I need to be ready to catch a swarm? So for me, the flow hive is really gimmicky. It's also really expensive. Top bar beekeeping is really cheap. You can build a top bar hive with scrap wood and basic tools. I don't think that beekeeping should be a hobby only for the wealthy, and it often is because you need hundreds of dollars of equipment. Beekeeping suits, a couple $100. You got your smoker, you got your brush, you got your hive tool for prying off wax and propolis. Beekeeping is already expensive. I don't have a honey extractor. I use solar extraction, right? I do crush and strain in a sunny window, and I let gravity strain my honey. But if you want to get an extractor, that's even more expensive. It's a very expensive hobby, and it shouldn't have to be. You can literally build a top bar hive for $35. So spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a flow hive, it just feels very gimmicky. Yeah. Feel free and disagree with me. You guys. Totally my personal opinion. Yeah. Catching up on questions. Thanks for giving me a second. Is there a way to help them survive the winter? There's a multiplicity of factors that contribute to the low overwinter survivability rate of honeybees. Because in the United States, honeybees are an introduced species and they compete directly with multiple species of native bees, there's been a big movement away from save the bees and more toward animosity toward honeybees, which again, they're already naturalized. They are here. They're not going away. And agriculture in the United States is almost entirely dependent on honeybees. Migratory beekeeping is a real problem for a number of reasons, but honeybees are here. And so I prefer to just treat them as something that exists. And why not utilize it in permaculture, right? I'm utilizing what's at my disposal. I'm not going to catch swarms and then just kill them. And also, if you want to talk about environmental impact, Honey has a far less of an environmental impact, while also pollinating all my crops, has far less of an environmental impact than, GMO sugar beets or sugarcane, right? Far less of a human cost in terms of exploited labor. It's just me and my bees. So things to think of. It's far beyond just the fact that they're introduced. I am a big, big fan of supporting native bees. Tons and tons of native bees in my garden. I find that being interested in European honeybees is kind of the gateway to like getting really excited about pollinators and learning about all of the other thousands of species of bees that we have in the US. When I first started gardening, I had no idea. And now I just notice so many different species of bee. My favorite bee is the longhorn bee because I think they're really stinking cute. And they're very active in late summer here. How do you find swarms? Great question. There's the Portland Urban Beekeepers, and you can sign up to be on the swarm line. I don't know if they're doing it this year, where you put in your name and address and they will text you, hey, there's a swarm at this location. It is a ball approximately the size of a football or a beach ball or a basketball. It is so many feet off the ground. First come, first serve, go get it. That's how I've gotten a lot of my swarms. Also, because I have a garden with a lot of habitat that bees like, I often just get swarms in my yard and around my neighborhood. And during swarm season, I will keep my beekeeping gear and a box in the back of my car. And if I see a swarm, I will pull over and I will get it. So that's yeah, that's what I do. I keep all kinds of gardening crap in the back of my car too, because if I see a cutting of something, I'll just take it. I have pruners and gloves and everything. Yeah. Is it risky to eat produce grown in the ground in an urban area? I'm in New Orleans. That is a really good question. That's a really good question. And some of you may know that there was I don't want to call it a scandal. It's a scandal here in Portland a number of years ago. There are still two glass manufacturers here in Portland, and Bullseye Glass, and I could yell at Ruth. She's talking with her sister, so I won't yell at her. She worked in a pollution lab for one of her internships, and part of it was about air pollution and the particulate pollution from Bullseye Glass and the other glass manufacturer. If you're in Portland, drop it in the chat. Let me know. Heavy metals from producing colored glass. Producing colored glass is extremely toxic. Had polluted the soil in much of Southeast Portland. And it was a significant issue, and it did get cadmium, and I forget what else, were being taken out by plants. So people had to have their gardens remediated as a result of that. It's always good to get your soil tested. It's always really good. For me, something else to think about. My house is 1922. I know I have lead paint. My house is a fixer-upper that was not well taken care of. Still fixer-upper 17 years later. We've not fixed it up yet, but it was very run down when we bought it. And I also know that there were sheds and a garage farther back on my property. This used to be a 1 acre plot, then became a half acre plot, and now is a quarter acre plot. And so there's remnants of outbuildings. When we first bought the house, under the weeds, in the first summer we were here, there was like a strip through the middle of the garden where all the weeds just browned and died very quickly. And I discovered that 12 to 18 inches under the ground, there was a sidewalk that went back to what used to be like a pump house, the remains of a pump house. So I know there's lead paint. I definitely know within the perimeter of the house there's lead paint. When you grow your fruits and veggies, plants that do uptake lead tend to accumulate it in leafy green parts of the plant and not so much the reproductive parts of the plant. So again, good to test the soil, good to look at the plants that you're growing. I don't grow green leafy vegetables within 3 to 4 feet of my house. I have grown blueberries and raspberries, but again, that reproductive part of the plant is much less likely to have lead accumulated in it. The tissues that tend to accumulate lead are going to be the roots and then the green leafy parts of the plant. So again, do your own due diligence, but that's something to think about. But it is an issue when you live in an urban area. There's, people dumped motor oil in the garden. People buried their trash. I find all kinds of trash buried in the garden, like old trash from the 40s and 50s if I'm digging really deep. Definitely an issue. Maybe I should have Ruth do a video on bullseye glass. Neighbors for Clean Air here in Portland, if you're interested in learning about the soil contamination in Southeast, Neighbors for Clean Air has a ton of information there, part of those lawsuits. And also a professor at Portland State University. Part of the reason they knew that the air pollution was so bad and that all of these heavy metals were accumulating in plants is because, I can't remember his name, but this professor was collecting moss samples, and the moss were actually taking in all of those heavy metals, and they could test in real time how much in different neighborhoods in Portland, because moss grows really well here, how much based on the levels of these heavy metals and these mosses from various areas of Portland, they were able to determine who was the most impacted. It's part of the lawsuit. Anyway. Okay. Oh dear God, is my garden near the train yard poisoned? I wouldn't think of it that way. I do think it's good to have your soil tested. And I think it's good to do a little bit of digging on what kinds of plants you love to grow and whether or not they are likely to accumulate different heavy metals. When we're looking at the destruction of the EPA, I actually just did, tiny tangent. I'm doing a short series of videos on America's heroes, like people I think embody American values and American heroism. And I've picked several people from that are into public health, indigenous advocacy, also environmental activism. And one of those people, I don't know if I've put out her video yet, is Lois Gibbs, and she helped get the EPA created, right? And the work that she did after her kid and her neighborhood, right? They were all on top of a chemical dump, and how important it is that we have regulation to protect us from corporations, because they will freely pollute the soil and the air and the water if it maximizes their profit margin. They have no conscience. They don't think about the people who live there. Hoover Chemical sold contaminated land to a school district for $1. They knew they had dumped 21,000 tons, I think it was, of toxic chemicals. And then they turned around and sold that to a school, and they didn't give a shit about the kids' health being impacted. So we have to have protections for us and the ability to remediate and clean up the messes. How Superfund is all about corporations who pollute are responsible for paying to clean up the mess. Okay. Subject on the list. Thanks, Trish. Possible discussion. Slugs. Thank you. Slugs are a big problem in Portland. I have ducks to help deal with my slugs, encouraging ground beetles, encouraging frogs, encouraging newts, encouraging garden spiders, all of those lovely creatures that love to eat slug eggs and slugs. Great way to reduce your slug population. I don't spray for slugs. Some people do beer traps. I prefer cardboard traps, which are where you take a damp piece of cardboard and you lay it out overnight. And in the morning, the sun comes up and the slugs don't want to get baked in the sun. And so they look for somewhere damp and they can hide. They really love cardboard. So a little bit after lunch, I come outside, I flip the cardboard over. It's got slugs underneath, and I just feed it all to the ducks. But you can squish them too if you don't want to. If you don't have ducks and chickens to feed them to. Chickens don't really like those huge leopard slugs. They won't eat them, in my experience. But ducks will eat. You get even big banana slugs. The ducks go ham for those. Some people use iron phosphate. That's like Sluggo, right? That's fine. I think it's toxic to dogs, so just be careful. I don't really have a problem with it. I understand why people use it. Sluggo is a big deal. Slugs can just completely, especially beans. I found they love beans. Oh, that reminds me. I have found in my own personal anecdotal experience, slugs prefer green plants to ones that are red and purple. So I don't know whether there's some anthocyanins. I don't know what the compounds are. They don't like them as much. So if I'm growing lettuce, I found the slugs go more for green varieties of lettuce than red. I've found that if I'm growing beans, they go more for the green beans versus the purple varieties with purpley leaves. That's just my own personal experience. So I grow a lot more red lettuces and purple beans. Oh, okay. What do I forage for? Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm looking at all these questions. Oh my gosh, you guys, so many good questions. We might go over an hour. Is that okay? Duck breeds. I have runner ducks. I'm also a really big fan of Welsh Harlequins. Love Welsh Harlequins. I think they're beautiful. Wonderful. They do like to have a pond, though. Runner ducks don't have to have a pond. They're loud. All ducks are loud. They're going to be really loud. White flies are a significant problem in Portland. I didn't have any until about 4 years ago. Never had any. When you buy plants and import them into your garden, you risk importing pests. And I got a cutting of a variety of tree collards from somebody, and it imported whiteflies into my garden. They're pretty common though. Spraying them, thinking about spraying them like in terms of just like with the hose and knocking off the whiteflies. You can mechanically help remove them as well, but it's definitely an issue. I don't have a great suggestion other than making sure you plant your plants far enough apart and being yes, they really go hard for kale. You're absolutely right. Goth Brooks, oh my God, I love your name. They definitely go hard for brassicas, tree collards, kale. They'll also go for cauliflower and broccoli. Yeah. Okay. Trish, we had a question and I lost it. Thanks for Frances Perkins. Yes, she's the goat. Look her up. Absolutely. Great suggestion. Thank you. Thank you for checking in. Okay, I'm going to lose folks on TikTok. Thanks, folks on TikTok, for hanging out with me. Appreciate y'all. It's probably going to kick me off alive here in a second. Okay, thank you. Looking back to the question. Thank you, Trish. Haskap berries. I do grow haskaps. There was another question further up and I was about to go for it and I got really excited. Hang on, I'm going to scroll up in the chat. Give me a moment here. Do you get duck eggs? Yes, I do. Ducks lay more consistently than chickens, but I get a good duck egg breed like a runner duck or like a Welsh Harlequin, and you'll get 300 eggs a year from one duck. They're really good. Make sure you like duck eggs, though. I think they're superior for baking, especially if you need to have a stiff white, if you have to beat your whites. They have a really, really good whites. They make like fabulous for a fluffy, light textured cake. Okay. Okay, scrolling up a second. Oh, what do I like to forage for? Oh my gosh, thank you for this question. Okay. I do quite a bit of foraging. Well, I haven't in a little bit, but 2020 through 2024, our family did a lot of foraging. We really like to hike together. I love to go mushroom hunting in the Pacific Northwest, tons of mushrooms, right? So we have loads of boletes here. I am not confident in hunting for things that are not morels, a couple different varieties of chanterelles, and some species of boletes. I am not a sophisticated enough mushroom forager to take risks on my health. I can tell a bed shitter from a chanterelle. I can confidently identify the chanterelles and all of their lookalikes, and so I feel confident harvesting those. Same thing for different species of boletes, but I don't go for some of the more unusual varieties. I also do not forage for matsutakes, even though they are very common and easy to forage for in the Pacific Northwest, more on the other side of the Cascades. But we have the perfect habitat for pine mushrooms here. The lookalikes are gonna be potentially lethal, right? So I'm not interested in foraging for them. I understand matsutakes have a really distinct smell. Like I think they smell like cinnamon and gem socks. I still, for me, that's not. It's a no-go. So my foraging is pretty rudimentary. I do like to forage for huckleberries. There are places you can do that here. I also I don't so much anymore because I grow my thornless blackberries in the front yard, and I think they're superior. For a long time, we foraged for invasive Himalayan blackberries and made jelly. When we used to go to church, our church would make our own communion wine from invasive Himalayan blackberries that we would forage and then crush and make the wine together. But I grow my own thornless ones, and I think they're bigger and sweeter and better flavor, a better ratio of pulp to seed. So I don't do that so much anymore. I would love to forage more. I just don't have all that much time. Loads of good things to forage in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, like lion's mane mushrooms grow here. I can confidently forage for some of that stuff. But also lobster mushrooms. That's another one I feel confident foraging for that we definitely have that grows here. I like lobster mushrooms a lot. Getting them before the bugs get to them is an issue because lots of bugs find them tasty. Do you tap any trees? Good question. People in the Pacific Northwest do tap birch trees. It's not the same as tapping maples, right? It's not good for the tree. So I don't tap any trees. And also, I don't really have the capability to boil it down to a usable product. I prefer honey for a sweetener. We have morels on our property. We have morels all over the neighborhood. Morchella importuna comes in wood chips all over the place. Portland is just like, it's actually not just morels. You can find like king boletes. You can find all kinds of edible mushrooms that pop up everywhere in Portland. Benefit of having 9 months of rain. Squeeze the stem on matsutakes. Yes, absolutely. I'm just like a little, guys, I'm just not, the stakes are too high, right? There aren't really any lookalikes to morels that are going to make me sick. I can confidently identify them. Tapping maple trees would be awesome. Like that's another thing that could be a community event, right? Because it's so much work to keep the fire going and to boil down the syrup. That would be awesome. We don't really have a lot of maples here. I don't know what I'm doing with my necklace. Keeps cutting into my neck. Okay. Okay. Other questions, Trish? Do I forage for wild raspberries? We don't really. Not really. Not really, because I have raspberries in my garden. I have 3 different kinds of raspberries in my garden, and that's enough for me. I actually want to expand how many black cap raspberries I have. That's my favorite raspberry. I think they're superior, and they freeze really well. So I don't forage for them. Black walnut makes a very tasty syrup. That's good to know. That's good to know. I do forage for black walnuts. Actually, when my mother was alive, she had walnut trees in her front yard. They used to live a block away from me. And they had 2 huge invasive walnut trees in their front yard that were probably like 90 years old. And she would collect all of the walnuts for me. And so I would get this big bag of walnuts every year so I wouldn't have to go forage for them. But now I have to do that. Oh, I actually forage in Portland. Hi, how's it going?
Yo, important question.
I'm on live. What's up?
Yeah, I know. Do we have a steamer?
Do we have a steamer?
Yeah.
Like a vegetable steamer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we do? Okay, where?
There's one that goes with the Instant Pot and one that goes in the rice cooker. But I also have the one that sits in my wok. I have the bamboo steamer. So it depends on what you want to make.
Okay, where's one?
Yeah, we have, the bamboo steamer's up high. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, sorry. That was a 17-year-old. I don't know if you could see him. He doesn't like to appear on camera. Oh, salmon berries, you can forage for them here. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a salmon berry in my front yard. They're kind of thorny. Yeah, I think they're pretty good. Sorry, I lost track of my thoughts here. Oh, have fun gaming tonight. If you're worried about birds stealing your fruit, so for me, okay, a couple of things. I'm in the city. We have a massive cat problem, which means we have a dearth of songbirds, unfortunately. But I still have a lot of birds. We have a lot of issues with crows and jays and a fair number of other birds in the garden. But not as diverse as it would be without all the cats. For me, I just overplant and I accept that about 20% of my fruit is going to be lost to birds every year. And that's my, I'm sharing the surplus. I'm, sharing with wildlife. A number of my neighbors net things, especially their blueberries. I accept that the top of my figs are all going to get pecked. My persimmon trees, all of the ones at the top of the canopy always have bird pecks in them. I just accept that. But you absolutely can net your raspberries. You want to be really careful that you get the kind of netting that won't catch birds. In an attempt a couple of years ago to keep wild birds out of my chicken run because of bird flu, we put up netting that ended up catching a number of birds. And then, now I have to go down and put on a mask and gloves because I don't know if these birds carry bird flu, and I've got to disentangle them, which I did bird banding for a long time. So it wasn't that big of a deal, but just make sure that you have the kind of netting that's not going to catch birds, because then you're creating another layer of problems. Raspberries, I really like black cap raspberries. One of my raspberries is Amity. I think that's a good raspberry. Thanks, Trish, for reminding people that we're talking about permaculture today. Yeah, micro mesh netting, agree. Yeah, insect netting, totally agree. A lot of the keep birds off your plants netting, you're going to end up catching some songbirds, which is just, it feels really terrible. especially if you don't get out there before they get in a bad way, right? Hmm. I'm just reading comments and questions. Thank you. Kumquats. Oh, I don't grow any kumquats right now. My dad used to grow them. So my parents moved here from Florida. My dad did geriatric medicine. So, lots of people, he did hyperbarics and geriatric medicine. So like lots of people with diabetic foot ulcers and grannies whose plastic surgery didn't heal well because they had, like poor oxygenation, what have you. He did that kind of stuff. And then when he retired, they moved here to be by us and be by their grandkids, that's a whole whatever. They bought a house 1 block away from us, and they grew tons of potted plants, including potted citrus. And my dad loves kumquats, and they did very well in a pot. My kids don't really like them. I don't really love them. I have lemon trees in a pot. I grow Meyer lemons, and they produce very well. I would like to grow calamondins because I think they make the best marmalade. Really, really good marmalade. Way better flavor than any other kind of orange. And they also do really well in a pot. A lot of people here grow smaller citrus, especially a lot of our the Asian immigrants in Portland grow a lot of citrus in pots. And you can do it here. You do need a heated greenhouse, or if you have a sunny front room, like for me, I just bring my lemon trees inside and they sit in my front room and they get enough sun in the winter. So I don't know. I don't grow kumquats, but you can grow them in a pot. Absolutely. I think repotting citrus is really important. Thinking about the fact that your potted trees have limited resources and they're going to consume those resources very quickly versus your tree in the ground. You can feed the soil. The soil is a thriving ecosystem that's feeding itself. Limited resources in a pot. So being conscious of the work to have to feed the soil and then repot. Hi, Javier. Thank you, Trish, for subjects on the list. Balcony potatoes. I've grown potatoes in boxes quite a bit, so no reason you couldn't do balcony potatoes. Layer them in the bottom and then just continue to layer up, right? Potatoes produce along the sides of the stem. So I tend to, in the garden, plant my potatoes in a trough and then add soil in and then end up with a hill at the end of it so that I get a lot more potatoes. Really easy method. Super easy. No reason you can't grow potatoes in a box. Potatoes are like one of the easiest things to grow. Be aware that if you're buying potatoes at the grocery store, sometimes they're treated to suppress the production of eyes. And so you may not get as much of a productive potatoes if you bought from a potato supplier. And you also can get a ton more varieties. There's a fingerling variety that I think is probably my favorite called La Rata. I don't speak French, Ratte. And it looks like a mama rat and all of her babies. When I say fingerling, I mean like they're big. They're big. Very, very good texture and flavor. They do super well in my garden. I also grow a variety called All Blue that does really, really well. And I also grow like Yukon Gold. For me, potatoes, because we have a mild climate, if I miss a potato or two, I get volunteer potatoes every year in the garden. How do you control mice in a permaculture garden? That's a great question. We actually have a mouse that has gotten into our house. I noticed yesterday and I had to put out traps. When you have a really old house and it's not that well sealed, sometimes if the weather turns bad or what have you, you end up with a mouse in the house. And unfortunately, neither of my dogs are very good at catching them. Okay, in permaculture would say the problem is the solution. So you don't have a mouse problem, you have an abundance of, right? And I would say owl food or Cooper's hawk food or terrier food, right? So what uses mice as a resource and how can you control the population and reduce the pressure of mice on your garden by utilizing them as a resource? Chickens will catch mice. By the way, if we get mice in our chicken run, my chickens will just catch them and eat them. And oh gosh, and if they find a nest, a mouse nest, they'll eat all those pinkies in a heartbeat. So I guess I would try and think of it that way. In my garden, we typically have Cooper's hawks that come in a fair amount and sharp-shinned hawks. I have enough room for them to land. So if there are mice in my garden, they will catch them. I've also seen them catch frogs in my garden. And also, rough-skinned newts, they'll catch in my garden. So in terms of mice, it's really difficult because if you live, especially in an urban area, they're really ubiquitous, right? Mice and rats and raccoons and crows are going to be the problems of urban gardening. We don't have the problems they have in rural areas like deer, right? When we lived in rural Oregon, there were rats and deer in the place that we gardened. And the woman that we gardened on her property, she had a German Shepherd to keep the deer away and a Schnauzer to keep the rats controlled. And it worked really well. But also, she had tons and tons of garter snakes. Snakes are a really good way to deal with rodents. So, how can you encourage snakes on your property? It's like people, there's this old meme. Somebody made a meme out of my front yard garden and it went really viral. And they said it was a garden in England. And I was like, that's my garden. That's not in England. That's my garden. But I got so many comments of like, oh, you're just going to get snakes. Having that kind of like garden, you're going to get snakes everywhere. There are no venomous snakes in Portland. So any snakes we can get, more snakes, please. All the snakes here, because that's pest control. If you live somewhere, right, like when I grew up in Texas, right, we had multiple species of rattlesnakes, copperheads, cottonmouths, like just tons of species of snakes to worry about. You would design differently if you're trying to make sure that you mitigate snake habitat, but also venomous snakes serve a purpose, and that's rodent control. So, yeah. Okay. How do you control ground squirrels in permaculture? I should have said when I listed urban pests, squirrels are definitely another one because I think I said this in my last life. My squirrel problem is significant. They love my kiwi berries, especially. It really pisses me off. It's hard when you live in an urban environment and you lack the natural predators, right? Here in Portland, they catch the coyotes. We are living in coyote habitat. We're living in fox habitat. We're living in owl habitat, but we have stripped away all of those, what you call meso predators, the middle-sized predators that would control these populations. And then we've provided an abundance of food for all of these pests, right? Like all of these primary consumers that are pests in our garden. This is really, really challenging in urban permaculture. I know a lot of people will put up owl roosts or try and create habitat for owls. Uh, I've found there's owls in my neighborhood. I have not found that they frequent my garden at all. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. If other people have an idea on how to deal with squirrels, again, mechanical barriers are a way to deal with them. I have a big filbert tree in my backyard. I should be netting it. The squirrels get most of the nuts, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry squirrels got your nectarines. The wildlife knows to get it like 2 days before you want to pick it. It's so frustrating. Yeah, I think people underestimate how much squirrels and chipmunks, etc., really like fruit. They have a sweet tooth too. I've also found squirrels really go for my peas. They really love peas, and not just like the pea pods. They'll go for the tender shoots of the peas because they're sweet and delicious. Using male wolf urine keeps squirrels away. I think that some people do that. Yeah, they use dog pee. Squirrels do love strawberries. Yeah, birds are mini velociraptors. Absolutely. Yeah, I know they're one step ahead of you, and it is frustrating to have to anticipate that, especially when you put so much work into growing your food. Right? You want to be able to eat it at the end of it and enjoy it. Mm. White clover or candy tuft. I have candy tuft in the front of my garden. They are cuttings that I took from my mom's garden. So when my mom passed away and we sold my parents' house, I took some cuttings from some various plants. So I have candy tuft out front. I don't love it. Blooms once, but it's there because my mom liked it. I use clover for ground cover everywhere. I love clover. It does bring in bees, right? You have white clover in your paths flowering, you're going to step on bees. So just be aware. And my kids all ended up with bee stings in their feet at various times because they were barefoot in the garden. Tons. All of my kids have stepped on bees. I have an issue with rabbits in my yard. Coyotes down in the creek don't help keep them away. Okay. I don't have a rabbit problem here. One neighborhood over in Maywood Park, they have a huge rabbit problem. And I think because it's much more shaded. And also they don't have as much of a coyote problem over there. I've seen when I go walking in Maywood Park, a lot of people have cages around their garden to protect from rabbits because it's definitely an issue. But I don't have that issue here. How about 15 more minutes? I was planning on going for an hour. It's supposed to be permaculture garden hour, but let's go 15 more minutes because y'all are giving me so many good things to yap about. Then I have to go back to talking about politics. Powdery mildew. Okay, so can I talk about powdery mildew and downy mildew at the same time? Because I think they're related sources of issues. And when we look at powdery and downy mildew, there's 2 times it really becomes a big problem in the garden. One is when we're seed starting in the spring. And the reason you're really likely to get powdery mildew, downy mildew, oh my God, and dampening off disease is overwatering and overhead watering, right? Too much water, not letting the soil dry out in between, and then watering overhead. When I start seeds, I have usually a big clear storage tub, and then it makes like a little mini greenhouse. And I have all of my little pots in the bottom, yogurt cups or what have you. And there's holes in the bottom, and I water from the bottom. And then I have my big clear plastic tub, and on warm days, I go, and for hardening off, I go and I can just take the whole tub outside, and I can bring the whole tub in. And by a whole tub, I mean like 5 or 6 of them that I have in my front room. And then once I have to pot them up into bigger pots, now I have to go and take a bunch of them outside. But initially, they're in clear plastic storage tubs, and I add the water to the bottom. I don't overhead water. That reduces both powdery and downy mildew, and I don't really get damping off disease. The other time that powdery mildew is a big problem in the garden, and I see people posting about it every year all over the place in their gardening pages, is late summer, early fall, and particularly on their squash plants. That's really normal. So at the end of the season, late summer, the plant is like really cranking all of this energy into growing and maturing your summer and winter squash. And it's in that period of like senescence, right? So the plant understands it's coming to the end of its life. It's stressed by the lack of water at the end of summer. The rains start to return. It gets a little cooler. Bam, powdery mildew everywhere. And people always post, oh my God, my squash is covered in powdery mildew. Very, very normal. That's part of your plant aging and approaching the end of its life. I don't worry about it at all. If my squash get powdery mildew on their leaves, okay, they're almost on their way out. It's time to make sure I'm pinching off any remaining flowers, and I'm letting the plant put all its energy into maturing fruit on the vine. So I don't treat it at all. Some people spray milk, which can be effective against powdery mildew, but understanding that there are times of the year when your plants are really tired and they're just worn out. Their bodies are wearing out. They're coming to the end of their life, and you can't treat those pests and diseases. That's part of helping the plant like end its time and get returned to the earth. Yeah. These are really good questions. Thanks, you guys. Really good questions. My peonies get powdery mildew every fall. Same. So do mine. Very normal. Very normal. And that's when I cut them back and call it good. Yep. Yeah, you guys asked such good questions. Thank you, Trish, for keeping the list of questions and subjects going, because Trish just told me 10 more minutes. Okay. Yes, ma'am. I love peonies. I grow a ton of peonies. Great climate for them, except that it often rains right when they bloom, and then it knocks all of the blossoms off. But I grow them for cutting. So I do grow them in frames and have supports, and then I cut them and bring them in the house. I love peonies. Trish is my social director. Trish has been one of my dearest friends since we were 14 years old. So she has known me through every iteration of me since I moved to Ohio in 9th grade, end of 8th grade. And yeah, she's my ride or die. Do I compost? Oh gosh, I love this question. Thank you for this. Okay. I started out composting, and I was a huge fan of an open compost heap in the poultry run. There are so many permaculture people. Shoot, what's that guy in New York State? Edible Acres, maybe? He is a big fan of having his chickens work over his compost, and it really accelerates the speed at which your compost breaks down, right? Because there is the chemical process of breaking down organic matter. There's also the mechanical process, which is why if you want to put something in your garden, like let's say you want to put toilet paper tubes or grapefruit peels, cutting them into smaller pieces is already mechanically breaking them down. It's like your teeth, masticating, chewing up your food. More surface area for all of the microbes to reach it, right? A toilet paper tube on its own can take a year to break down. If I tear it into little pieces in our rainy winters, that's gone in 3 months. So he had these open compost heaps. And I've always been a fan of this because the chickens just work it over and they turn it into soil super, super quickly. And it's creating free food for the chickens. You throw it in the compost heap. If you have open compost, you're going to get maggots. You're going to get soldier flies and also invasive flies. Laying their eggs, you're going to get maggots. That is immediately protein-rich food that your chickens will turn into eggs. And it's just reducing your food bill. Yeah, okay, but I live in the city, and what happens if you compost in the city? Hi, I'm on live.
Hey, we got with the market. We got some deep fried bananas and some patio, and we're gonna make gyoza.
Okay.
So you should know.
Okay.
And I got the ingredients to make pad see.
Do you want to say hi to people?
Yeah. And I'm gonna be making a lot of Thai Vietnamese food this week.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Bees home on spring break. Okay. They went to Lily Market. If you live in Portland, it's our favorite Asian grocery. It's right by our house. Okay, so shit, I lost my train of thought. This is. Do you see why it takes me so long to film videos? And sometimes I repeat myself in a video because, like, I'll get interrupted 12 times in the course of making a 10-minute video. Oh, compost. Okay, so in the city, open compost equals rodents. Open compost equals rodents, and also raccoons. And I know people say keep your dairy and your meat products out of the compost and you won't get rats. That's not true. That's not true at all, especially if you have an active compost heap that's really cooking. It produces heat. And especially in the cold months, rodents want somewhere nice and toasty warm. And so we found that we got rats in our compost. And I was like, fuck this. I do not want, nope, I don't want this. No more of this. So I have a couple of videos about alternatives to compost heaps in your garden. I largely do trench composting now. So in my garden, I will have a trench going, and my compost bucket is limited to things like we brush our hair in the morning, all the hair that comes out of the brush, toilet paper tubes, vegetable scraps, onion skins, grapefruit, peels, things like the avocado skins, things that like rodents and raccoons don't want to eat. And they go into the trenches, and then I just bury it, right? So the bucket goes in here, it gets buried, I move down one, buried, move down. So I do trench composting. It breaks down super, super, super fast. In a wet, mild climate, that shit is turned into soil so quickly. If you have a more arid climate, hi Ruth, your computer is in here. Hang on a second. Okay. Oh, okay. There you go. Okay. Okay. So in a drier climate, you might not have the same success. It might be slower. And if you have a long, cold winter, it'll also be slower. The other thing that you can do is like something like bokashi, which is anaerobic compost in your kitchen. You can do it under kitchen sink. And you can get a bokashi starter. Lots of people in Portland, a number of my permaculture friends in Portland do bokashi. And I don't, just because it's like one more thing I don't have time for. I have a worm bin. That's the other thing. Worm bin, also effective. But that's for things like banana peels and bread crusts and paper, shredded office paper. Holy cow, worms love shredded paper. But I also use shredded paper in my poultry houses as bedding. So I don't do open composting. We do have municipal compost in Portland. And that means that like bones or kitchen scraps that are not compostable in my garden because they would attract rodents or what have you, then go in the city municipal compost, which does a really hot compost. A lot of my tree prunings, or like, let's say that I'm pruning my, here's an example, pruning my blackberries. Blackberries root very, very easily. Their prunings root very easily. I don't have a hot compost that will kill those, and I don't want to just chop them up and throw them back on the bed, or I will end up with my blackberries having walked it. Raspberries, blackberries, everything will just walk, right? So those go in the municipal compost. It's hot, it breaks down really quickly. And then there is the ability for that to get turned into good, rich soil that the city uses on parks. And I think they resell it as well. So my worm bin always gets too wet. Okay, I have some thoughts about that. My mom had a worm bin since, oh my gosh, since we moved back from Germany. So one of my earliest memories in Tucson is that my mom would go out to the worm bin in the garage, which was like climate controlled. My dad had his wood shop out there, so it wasn't like roasting hot in the garage in Tucson. And she had a spigot installed, and she had this jug that was labeled vermiliquor, right? And she would constantly, I don't know how often, I was little, she would drain all of the liquid out of her worm bin. And that for me, I think has been one of the most successful tips for having a good worm bin where you're not drowning your worms, is having a spigot on it and be able to drain off all of that liquid. And then she would dilute it 1 part vermiliquor and 10 parts water, and it's fantastic fertilizer for your houseplants. So Trish says 2 minutes. Can I do 5 minutes, Trish? Because it's my timer says I've been on for 1 hour and 25 minutes. I found also if your worm bin is too wet, go for more shredded paper and less vegetable matter, and that will help quite a bit. Okay, 5 minutes. Thanks, Trishy. I do a second tier, having multiple okay, great added tip. So in my worm bin, mine is made out of storage tubs, and I have 1 storage tub, and then I have bricks in the bottom, like 3 bricks, I think. And then I have another storage tub with holes drilled in the bottom. My worms live in the second tub, and that means like this much in the bottom between the 2 tubs is where all those juices go, and then I drain it off. Yes, having that partition so you don't end up with soup at the bottom and all your worms drowned. Yes, absolutely. I could absolutely do like a compost focused one. Someone asked about bokashi resources. I would love to talk a great deal more about that. My mom was really into bokashi in Florida. It worked really well for her. It really was odorless. It's very odorless. Yeah. How about this? So I do want to say next week I will not be here for the Permaculture Live. I need a week off. And then I'll be back after that. But I want to make sure that I get questions ahead of time. But also I just really enjoy the chance to like spur of the moment, talk about whatever y'all want. So I know things are going to be evolving in your gardens as the spring is kind of waking things up. So let's take a break next week. And then I'm happy to talk about whatever you want the week after that. And it doesn't have to just be gardening, anything permaculture related. I'm super down to talk about. Yes, every Thursday at 3:00 Pacific, I'm going to do a 1 hour, or I guess sometimes an hour and a half permaculture AMA. And then if you're watching on YouTube, YouTube records and automatically reposts. So if you miss it, I think it takes like 15 minutes or something. If you miss the actual live, it will repost it. If I have the bandwidth in the future, I know like Heather Cox Richardson, let's use her as an example. When she does a live, she has an assistant who breaks it up into smaller videos and reposts those so people can watch on just one topic. Long range goals for me to have the bandwidth to do that, to break down longer videos into discrete topics. So yeah. Okay. I have not seen Knitting Cult Lady's recent homeschooling video. Actually, I was texting with Daniela yesterday, and I should go watch it. Can I do a specific unschooling live? Not next week, but the week after, because I know that my adult unschoolers would love to weigh in with their opinions. I always want to be really careful that I'm not presenting unschooling with the rosy parents' perspective. It was their education and not mine. So I always try and make sure that their voice is included because they don't agree with me on everything and they have a different perspective on how that experience was for them. So if it's okay with you, I would like to save that for a particular live where at least Ruth could join in. I know B likes to talk about unschooling too. I'm sure my boys would be interested, but I don't typically have my minor children on camera. Hal is about to turn 18 though. And so if he's interested when he's an adult and he wants to make that decision for himself, he might come on and talk about it as well. I have. Okay. So this will save the chat for me, and questions that didn't get asked today, I would like to save them for future lives. Thank you for all the really good questions. Someone says, is there a good email to contact Angela? It's parkrosepermaculture@gmail.com. I'm really bad about checking my email. I think I've said this before. I went through a period after right after the election and then after Charlie Kirk died where I got like nonstop death threats. So I kind of stopped checking my email because it's really stressful. I'm also working on getting a PO box. That's on my list because people keep asking me, can we mail you something? Can we send you a postcard or like a flyer about what our organization is doing? And so I'm getting a post office box set up. It's going to happen really soon. I need all of the help. You know, thanks everybody for being here. I will go watch an Cult Ladies video today, and then I would like to set aside time in a week and a half, maybe to do an unschooling live. And I'll talk it up ahead of time. And I would love to answer people's questions because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And I have lots of big feelings about homeschooling and the risks that it poses to kids. So thank you everybody so much for joining me today. Thank you for the people who hung on TikTok, even though I was dealing with such a busy chat on YouTube. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to dip out from TikTok. Thank you so much. Y'all take care. Oh my gosh. Okay. Guys, I had 550 people on my TikTok live. That's unusual. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. And I will be back again, not next week, but the week after. Monday is like a politics chat, this week in resistance. And I did a poll and people said 3 p.m. Pacific. So I'm gonna do those at 3 p.m. Talk about whatever you want. Focus more though on positive stories, like positive stories from the resistance movement. And someone said, could you also include big losses for not just positive for us, but also big L's for them? So I'm going to do that. And then Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, after next week, Permaculture AMA. And then please look out for that unschooling video. Yeah, please make sure you can also, I noticed that there were 5 or 6 people that had I don't know how you do it, waited, got themselves in the waiting room for this live days beforehand. I'm going to try and pre-schedule more lives so you can put it on your calendar and be there. So thanks people all over the world who are on this chat. Y'all are amazing. Please take care and I will be back. I'll be back really soon.